The Harlem sky was shrouded in mist and the sickly glow of yellow streetlights. Outside the window, the last drops of winter rain pattered on the tin roof. The third-floor apartment was eerily silent, broken only by the weary ticking of the wall clock 03:57, 03:58. In the small room, Abigail Carter lay crumpled on the floor, her face ashen, her breaths faint and rasping. On the table, an untouched cup of heart medication sat beside a flickering desk lamp. Her 6-year-old twins, Zoe and Zach, still in their pajamas, stared at their mother with terrified eyes. Zoe. "Mommy's not waking up," Zach whispered, his voice trembling. "Call 911. The girl cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. Zoe grabbed the phone, her small hands fumbling with the familiar numbers her mother had taught her. 91111. But her sweaty fingers slipped and the screen shifted. In her panic, she pressed the wrong contact. A name appeared, Lucas Hayes. Zoe didn't know who he was. She spoke on instinct, her voice choked with fear. "Please save my mom. She's not breathing." Across the city, in a Manhattan penthouse. Lucas Hayes jolted awake. The alarm hadn't sounded, but his phone vibrated frantically on the nightstand. He glanced at the screen. Unknown number. A child's voice, fractured with fear, spilled through. "Please help my mom. She won't wake up." Lucas frowned. "Who is this?" "You've got the wrong number." "No. My mom needs help. Please." He was about to hang up when a boy's voice broke in, tiny and piercing like a dagger to his heart. "My mom's name is Abigail Carter." That name froze Lucas's blood. He sat bolt upright, his heart pounding. The room suddenly felt stifling, the air thick and suffocating. Abigail. 6 years had passed since he'd heard that name. 6 years since he walked away from the African-American girl with a radiant smile and eyes that could make a man believe in futures. 6 years since he chose his career over love. Lucas gripped the phone, his voice tight. "Where are you?" Zoe sobbed. "Harlem. House number 2117, 3rd floor. My mom's not breathing. Stay on the line. Listen to me. I'm coming right now." He sprang up, grabbed his coat, and bolted from the room. Lucas's sleek black sports car screeched down Madison Avenue. The clock read 04:11 a.m. Winter rain lashed the slick pavement. The city slept except for the roar of his engine echoing through Harlem's weathered streets. He called emergency services, his voice hoarse. "Female patient, Abigail Carter, 217 West 145th Street. She's not breathing, 2 kids with her." The dispatcher asked his relation to the patient. Lucas hesitated for a moment, then said softly, "The woman I used to love." He pulled up to the old building, its flickering streetlights and peeling paint, a stark contrast to his world. The iron gate was warped, but he pushed through, racing up the stairs, heart hammering. The apartment door was ajar. Inside, 2 small figures huddled together, trembling. "Kids." He gasped, barely able to breathe. They turned their gray eyes, glinting in the dim light. Lucas knelt. "Where's your mom?" Zach pointed. "She's there. She's not waking up." He rushed over, lifting Abigail into his arms. Her body felt light as smoke, her gaunt face framed by sweat-damp curls, her lips pale and blue. "Abby, listen to me. You have to wake up," he called, shaking her. No response. He pressed his hand to her chest, starting CPR, counting with the precision of someone who'd studied basic medicine. 1, 2, 3. Breathe, please. A faint moan escaped her throat. He paused, ear to her chest. She was breathing weakly but alive. The wail of an ambulance siren grew closer. He carried her out into the rain, the twins trailing behind, clinging to his coat. "Don't leave our mom," Zoe sobbed. He looked at them, a mix of fear and instinct in his eyes. "I promise, I won't leave her alone again." In the ambulance, red and blue lights flashed. Abigail was hooked to a ventilator. Lucas sat beside her, clutching her hand, feeling its fragile warmth, terrified that if he let go, she'd slip away forever. He glanced at the twins huddled at the end of the ambulance, their clothes soaked, eyes red. Zoe rested her head on Zach's shoulder. A shiver ran through Lucas. He couldn't look away from them. Something unmistakable, the curve of their lips, the shape of their noses, their eyes mirrored his own reflection. He swallowed hard, whispering to himself, "My God, could it be?" Harlem Hospital at dawn. The air was cold, heavy with antiseptic. Lucas stood outside the ER, hands in his coat pockets, eyes fixed on the frosted glass door. The door opened. A doctor stepped out, voice calm. "She's stable but needs rest and long-term treatment. Overwork has severely stressed her heart." Lucas nodded, thanking him. As the doctor left, Lucas lingered, gazing into the room where Abigail lay, her face serene, yet weary, her curls spilling over the pillow. He murmured, "You're still the same. I was just too late." At the end of the hall, the twins slept in each other's arms. Vending machine light fell on their faces. Lucas approached, draping his coat over them. Zoe stirred, opening her eyes. "Mister, who are you?" He knelt, offering a faint smile. "A friend of your mom's. Will you stay?" Lucas looked into her eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. "I promise. I'm not going anywhere." Dawn broke. Sunlight spilled through the hospital window, touching Abigail's face. She stirred. When her eyes opened, she saw a familiar figure by her bed, a man with a silver watch and eyes full of unspoken words. "You?" Her voice was weak. "What are you doing here?" Lucas gave a tired smile. "Your kids called me." Abigail frowned, looking around. "Where are Zoe and Zach?" "They're sleeping. In the hall. They're good kids." She turned away. "You don't have to be here. You have your own life now." Lucas shook his head. "I thought so, until your kids called me in the middle of the night. Then I realized that life means nothing." Silence stretched. Outside, the soft tap of nurses' shoes echoed on the tile. Abigail stared at her hands, the faint calluses from years of night shifts. "You left, Lucas," she said quietly. "I survived. I raised my kids. I don't need your pity." Lucas gently touched her hand, his gaze steady. "This isn't pity. I owe you, and maybe I owe myself, for 6 years of cowardice." A hush fell. She didn't speak, only looked out the window, where dawn's light filtered through frosted glass. Lucas stood, adjusting his coat, his voice soft as a breath. "I'll be here, at least until you're better. You can't stop me this time." The door closed. In the white room, only the steady beep of the heart monitor remained constant, yet distant. Abigail closed her eyes, tears falling. 6 years she'd tried to forget, yet one voice brought it all back. 4:00 a.m. the next morning. Lucas sat in the hospital hall, the twins asleep against his shoulders. Neon light cast shadows on his hair, revealing a faint smile, the smile of a man who'd found a reason to keep living. A 4 a.m. call can change a life. Some mistakes, when forgiven, become miracles. If this story touched your heart, stay with us, for their second journey is just beginning. Sometimes what we think is lost is only waiting for us to be brave enough to return. The early winter morning light filtered through the hospital window, casting a shimmering glow across the white-tiled floor. The scent of antiseptic mingled with the distant squeak of stretcher wheels rolling down the corridor. Lucas sat on a metal chair, his back against the wall, the 6-year-old twins still slumped in sleep against his shoulders, Zoe on his left, Zach on his right. He glanced at them now and then, occasionally brushing Zoe's hair or gently squeezing Zach's hand, as if afraid they might vanish. The feeling was both foreign and inexplicably familiar. For 6 years, his world had been numbers projects and people who feigned respect. Now, with these two small souls leaning against him, he felt he could finally breathe. The hospital room door opened. Abigail was awake. Lucas stepped inside, moving softly as if afraid to hurt her. The dim light reflected off her sweat-damp curls. She was still beautiful, not the radiant girl from years ago, but the beauty of a woman who had faced loss and learned to hide tears behind a smile. Her eyes opened, locking onto his gaze. That look stopped her cold. "You haven't left." Her voice was hoarse. "I've been gone too long already." Lucas replied, his voice low and steady. The room fell silent save for the steady beep of the heart monitor, as if measuring the distance between them. "You don't need to be here," she said, her voice weak but resolute. "You have your own life now, your company, other people, things better than me." Lucas gave a faint smile, his eyes trembling slightly. "Better than you?" For 6 years I tried to believe that, but last night when your kids called me in a panic, everything fell apart. Abigail turned her face away. She hated that voice, the voice of the man who once made her believe love could conquer poverty, only to walk away out of fear. "I don't want to revisit the past," she said. "It's over." Lucas sat on the edge of her bed. "It's never been over for me." He glanced around the room, then asked softly, "The kids, they're mine, aren't they?" Abigail gripped the blanket tightly. For a moment she saw it in his eyes, pain, shock, and raw regret. "They don't need you," she said. "They have me." Lucas nodded slightly, but his gaze didn't waver. "And you?" She bit her lip, looking away. Not a word. That afternoon the sky was heavy with gray clouds. A light snow dusted the hospital roof. Lucas stood in the courtyard calling his assistant to reschedule his entire calendar. "No, cancel the meetings. I'm tied up with personal matters." On the other end, Evelyn, his current fiancée, spoke through the phone. "Personal matters. Lucas, you disappeared all night. What's going on?" He paused, eyes fixed on the third-floor window where Abigail lay. "I ran into someone." Evelyn sighed. "You're scaring me." Lucas hung up without a reply. Something was stirring inside him, a feeling he'd tried to forget. Guilt, compassion, and love. That evening he visited Abigail's room again. She was still awake. The dim hallway light spilled in, bathing her face in a soft golden hue. "You should go home," she said, not looking at him. "I brought you some food. Chicken soup. The doctor said you haven't eaten all day." She glanced at the container, then back to the window. "You don't have to do this, Lucas." He sat down, his voice soft as a breeze. "Maybe I don't have to, but I want to." She let out a laugh, unsure if it was bitter or tender. 6 years ago, you said wanted to work, to succeed, to prove you were good enough for me. And then you left. I thought your world had no room for me anymore." Lucas's smile faded. "My world's empty now. All that's left is regret." She fell silent. Outside, the wind swept against the glass. He sat there quiet, not asking for anything, 2 days later, the doctor cleared Abigail for discharge. Lucas came to pick her up, but she brushed him off. "You don't need to take me home. I just want to make sure you don't collapse on the way." She sighed, pulling on her old coat, walking slowly down the hall. The twins ran alongside Zoe, holding her mother's hand, Zach staring at Lucas. Mr. Zach asked, "Mom said you helped her. Are you her friend?" Lucas knelt, smiling faintly. "I guess so." "Thank you," the boy said, his smile bright. "Mom says good people show up when you need them most." Lucas froze for a moment. He glanced at Abigail. She didn't meet his eyes, but he saw her shoulders tremble slightly. The Harlem apartment still reeked of dampness. When she opened the door, cold air rushed in, carrying the musty smell and the whistle of wind through the cracks. "You still live here?" "Yeah. Rent's cheap, close to the hospital." He walked around, noting the peeling walls, the rickety table, and a small photo taped to the wall, Abigail and the twins at a picnic. He stopped. The photo, bathed in sunlight, showed Zoe laughing and Zach playing in the sand. He saw his own smile in their faces. "I could help you move somewhere better, closer to the city, safer." "No need," she said. "I don't want pity." "Abby," he said softly, his voice catching, "I'm not here to pity you. I'm here because I never stopped thinking about you, or about these kids." She was silent for a long time. Finally, she said, "The past doesn't feed the present. Lucas, you can help, but don't stay." Night fell. The apartment was still. The twins slept soundly. Abigail stepped onto the balcony wrapped in a sweater, looking down at the streetlight's glow. In the distance, Manhattan sparkled, the world of those who never feared loss. Across the street, she saw him. Lucas stood in the shadows, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on her balcony. He said nothing. She made no gesture. They just looked at each other across the void, two people who once loved, now lost between worlds. She whispered, just loud enough for herself, "Why come back, Lucas?" When everything settled. But deep down, she knew the answer, because he was never settled, and she had never forgotten. The next morning, Lucas returned with breakfast. Zoe squealed, "Mr. Lucas, I made breakfast for Mom." He sat with the twins, slicing bread and pouring milk. Abigail watched from a distance, her expression complex. The scene, a man with her children, was both warm and painful. "What are you trying to do?" she asked quietly, as the twins ran to get toys. "I don't know. Maybe just make up for it. You can't make up for 6 years with a few kind days." Lucas nodded, his voice low. "I know. But if you give me a chance, I'll use the rest of my life." Abigail looked at him. The morning light fell on his face, the face that once made her fall in love, now weary but truer than ever. "Don't make promises, Lucas," she said, her voice trembling. "Your promises once burned my heart." He fell silent, then bowed his head. His voice choked. "Then let me prove it with silence." That night as he left, Zoe ran to the door, grabbing his hand. "Mr. Lucas, will you come back tomorrow?" He knelt, smiling. "If your mom allows." Abigail looked at him, saying nothing. She gave a slight nod, a small gesture, but to him it was a miracle. Late at night, Lucas sat in his car, watching the lit apartment. He recalled Abigail's voice from their last call 6 years ago, the words that made him leave. "I don't need a dreamer. I need someone who stays." Now he whispered, "I'm staying, Abby, whether you believe me or not." Beyond Harlem glittered, and in that third-floor apartment where the woman he once loved and 2 children with his eyes lived, Lucas Hayes knew his life had turned a new page. A page where he was no longer a billionaire, no longer a CEO, but a man seeking forgiveness. A 4 a.m. call can change a life. Some mistakes, when forgiven, become miracles. If this story touched your heart, stay with us, for their second journey is just beginning. Sometimes what we think is lost is only waiting for us to be brave enough to return. The next morning, Harlem was still waking up, a city half dreaming, half struggling. The sky was the color of steel, the streets wet from last night's drizzle. A faint hum of traffic rose in the distance as Lucas Hayes parked his black sedan at the curb outside Abigail's worn brick apartment building. He sat there for a long moment, hands gripping the steering wheel, watching his breath fog the glass. It had been a week since that night, the call at 4 a.m., the chaos, the hospital, the shock of seeing her again. He'd told himself it was just guilt that brought him back. But guilt didn't explain why he couldn't stop thinking about the sound of her voice saying his name again. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time until he reached the 3rd floor. The hallway smelled faintly of coffee and laundry detergent. He knocked twice. A pause. Then a cautious voice. "Who is it, Lucas?" Another pause. Then the sound of the lock turning. Abigail stood there in her robe eyes, tired but alert. Her curls were tied up messily. A faint line from the pillow creased her cheek. She looked real, no pretense, no perfection, and somehow that hurt more than anything. "Morning," Lucas said softly. "I brought breakfast, for you and the kids." She hesitated, scanning his face, then moved aside. "You can put it on the table." Inside, the small apartment was filled with morning light, filtering through thin curtains. Toys scattered across the floor. 2 cereal bowls sat half-finished on the counter. The walls were decorated with drawings, stick figures, hearts, a crude sketch of 3 people holding hands. He smiled faintly. "Zoe and Zach's work." She nodded, tying her robe tighter. "They're at school. I start the evening shift today." He unpacked the bag croissants, fresh fruit orange juice from a nearby cafe. She raised an eyebrow. "Trying to impress me with overpriced pastries, just trying to make sure you eat," he said, a small grin breaking through. Her expression softened, but only for a moment. "You don't have to do this, Lucas." "I know," he replied, sitting down. "But I want to." Silence stretched between them, the kind that held too many memories. Finally, Abigail spoke. "You think this?" She gestured to the food, to his presence. "Fixes anything? You think showing up now changes what happened?" He shook his head slowly. "No. I think it's the first thing I've done right in a long time." Her lips trembled with a breath she didn't release. "You left me when I needed you the most. Do you even remember what you said that night?" He did. Every word. "I can't build a future if I can't even feed myself. You deserve better, Abby." He remembered her tears, the way her hand shook when she closed the door on him. "Yeah," he whispered. "I remember. Then don't come back pretending you didn't destroy me." He looked up, eyes raw. "I'm not pretending, Abigail. I live with that every day." Her jaw tightened. "You live in a Manhattan penthouse. Don't talk to me about pain." Lucas flinched, the truth cutting deeper than she knew. "That penthouse feels more like a coffin. Every morning I wake up surrounded by everything I wanted, and nothing I need." Abigail folded her arms, but the wall she'd built began to crack. His voice carried something she hadn't heard in years. Not arrogance, not control, but regret. Later that day, Lucas picked up the twins from school. Zoe ran straight into his arms. "You came back. I said I would. Didn't." He smiled, hoisting her up. Zach followed more cautiously, backpack dragging behind him. "You're not going to disappear like Dad in the cartoons, right?" Zach asked, squinting suspiciously. Lucas froze for half a second, then smiled sadly. Not this time, buddy. They walked home together. The children's chatter filled the air, the kind of innocent chaos he didn't realize he missed. Mom says we can't have pets, Zoe said, pouting. Lucas chuckled. She's right. You live in a tiny apartment. But if we had a house, she added slyly, we could have a puppy. Right? He laughed. We'll see. As they reached the building, he caught Abigail, watching from the window above. Their eyes met hers, cautious, his unguarded. For a fleeting second, he saw the woman who once believed in him. That night, he stayed late helping with homework. Abigail came out of the kitchen drying her hands and froze at the sight, Lucas sitting cross-legged on the floor, Zach leaning on his arm, Zoe sprawled across his lap, all three giggling over a math worksheet. For a moment, it looked like the family they could have been. Zach pointed at the paper. So, if I have 6 cupcakes and Zoe eats 4. Hey, Zoe protested. Lucas grinned. Then you learn an important life lesson. Never leave your cupcakes unguarded. The twins burst out laughing. Abigail couldn't help smiling. Looks like you finally found an audience that thinks you're funny, she said. Lucas turned to her, and the smile faded into something tender. I only ever wanted to make one person laugh. Her breath caught. Don't. But he didn't move closer. He didn't touch her. He just looked, and somehow that hurt more than any embrace. Later, after the twins had gone to bed, they stood on the balcony. Harlem glowed below them, streetlights reflected off puddles, the low hum of the city rising like a lullaby. Abigail leaned on the railing, arms crossed. They're getting attached, you know. The more you come around, the harder it'll be if you walk away again. I'm not walking away, he said simply. You always say that before you do. Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. You think I planned any of this? I didn't even know they existed. You didn't tell me. Her voice cracked. You were too busy building your empire, Lucas. What was I supposed to do, show up at your office with 2 babies? You wouldn't have even opened the door. He took a slow step toward her. You don't know that. I do. She met his gaze. Because the man I loved back then wasn't ready to be a father. Maybe he still isn't. He nodded, eyes lowered. You're right. Back then, I was a coward. I thought success would make me worthy of you. He looked up, voice breaking. Turns out success without you meant nothing. She looked away, biting her lip. Don't do this. Do what make me remember. He took another step close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. You never forgot Abby. Neither did I. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. The city noise faded. The wind stilled. The distance between them shrank to a single breath. Then she turned away, voice trembling. Good night, Lucas. He hesitated, wanting to say more. Instead, he whispered good night and left. The next morning, she found a note taped to her door. Made breakfast. Don't fight me on this one. L on the counter, a bag of groceries and a jar of fresh coffee beans, the kind she used to love, but could never afford. Abigail touched the note, feeling something stir inside her. She thought was long gone. Not love, not yet, but the dangerous possibility of it. Outside, through the window, she spotted him again, standing by his car, watching quietly as Zoe and Zach ran toward school. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't the CEO today. He was just a man, exhausted, remorseful human. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel angry. She felt afraid that forgiveness might hurt more than hate ever did. That evening, Lucas sat alone in his car parked a block away. He watched the lights go out one by one in Abigail's building. A slow smile crept across his face as he remembered Zoe's laugh. Zach's stubborn frown, and the way Abigail's eyes had softened when she thought he wasn't looking. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "I can't change the past. But maybe I can rewrite the rest." The rain began to fall again, soft, forgiving, endless. And somewhere in that quiet Harlem night, two hearts that had once broken in opposite directions began tentatively to turn toward each other again. It was a Friday morning in Manhattan when everything fell apart. Lucas Hayes walked into the headquarters of Hayes Dynamics, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that reflected the gray winter sky. His reflection stared back at him, sharp suit perfect tie eyes that hadn't slept in days. To everyone else he looked like power, but inside he felt like a man balancing on the edge of a knife. He'd just come from Harlem. Abigail's laugh still echoed in his head, soft, reluctant, genuine. For the first time in years, he'd woken up feeling alive. He didn't know that before the day ended, that feeling would be gone. At the 34th floor, the elevator doors slid open. The air smelled of expensive coffee and ambition. Assistants greeted him with nervous smiles. "Morning, Mr. Hayes." He nodded absently, scanning the corridor. Reporters were waiting, which was unusual. Then he saw her. Evelyn Carter, his fiancée, standing by his office door, eyes blazing, phone clutched in her hand. Her perfect hair and flawless posture couldn't hide the fury beneath. "Lucas," she said, her voice tight. "We need to talk." He froze. Evelyn wasn't the kind of woman who raised her voice, ever. "What's wrong?" he asked. She turned the phone toward him. A headline glared back in bold letters. "Billionaire Lucas Hayes secretly fathered twins with former lover in Harlem." Below it, a photograph, grainy but clear. Him, Abigail, Zoe, and Zach, walking down a wet Harlem street laughing. His hand reaching out, brushing Abigail's shoulder. A perfect family portrait, one he hadn't even realized someone had taken. Lucas went cold. "Evelyn, I can explain." "Explain what?" Her voice cracked, sharp as glass. "That you've been sneaking off to play house with some woman from your past. With children." "Lucas." "Evelyn." "Stop. No, you stop." She stepped closer, trembling. "You think I wouldn't find out? You're the face of a billion-dollar company. Every step you take is tracked, photographed, monetized. Did you really think you could hide this?" He rubbed his temples, voice low. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Her words hit like bullets. "Are they your kids?" The silence that followed was worse than any answer. Evelyn's face went pale. She took a step back. "Oh my God, Evelyn." "Don't." She shook her head. "Don't touch me. Don't say anything." Her voice broke. "Do you have any idea what this will do to us? To the merger?" To me, she turned, walking away. He reached out, but she didn't look back. The sound of her heels on marble echoed down the hallway, final hollow, like a verdict. By noon, the story had gone viral. Screens in the lobby displayed financial news tickers, and every one of them showed his name. Hayes Dynamics stock plunges after scandal. Public outrage over Billionaire's secret family. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Lawyers, PR teams, board members. Henry Walsh, his oldest friend and CFO, stormed into the office. "What the hell is going on, Lucas?" Lucas didn't look up. "They followed me to Harlem." "You think that's an excuse?" Henry slammed a file down. "We've got shareholders demanding answers. The board's calling an emergency vote. You could lose everything." "Then let them take it," Lucas said quietly. Henry stared at him. "You've lost your mind." "No," Lucas said. "I just found it." That evening, Lucas drove straight to Harlem. Cameras flashed as soon as he parked. Reporters shouted questions. Mr. Hayes, is it true you've been hiding a family? Are the twins your children? Are you abandoning your fiancée? He ignored them, pushed through the crowd, and ran up the stairs to Abigail's apartment. She was packing. Suitcases, half-open clothes thrown across the bed. Zoe sat silently in the corner, clutching a stuffed rabbit. Zach stared out the window, jaw tight. Abigail. He gasped out of breath. What are you doing? She didn't look at him. Leaving. Why? She spun around, eyes filled with tears and rage. Because you happened, Lucas. Because I told you this world would eat me alive, and you dragged me into it anyway. This isn't your fault, isn't it? She laughed bitterly. They're outside right now calling me a gold digger, a liar, a mistake. They're dragging my kids' names through the news, like dirt. He took a step closer. I'll fix it. Her eyes flashed. You can't fix this with money. He froze. The words hit deep precise, because he knew she was right. Every time something breaks, you throw money at it, she said, voice trembling. But this isn't about damage control. It's about trust. And you broke that a long time ago. He swallowed hard. Abby, please, don't walk away again. She shook her head, tears finally spilling. I didn't walk away last time, Lucas. You did. She zipped the suitcase and lifted it off the bed. He reached out, but she stepped back. Don't follow us, she said, voice barely above a whisper. You've done enough. And before he could say another word, she walked past him out the door down the hall, into the noise of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. Zoe turned back at the doorway. Will you still come to my birthday, Mr. Lucas? His throat tightened. Always, sweetheart. She smiled faintly, then disappeared into the crowd. Hours later, the apartment was empty. Lucas stood alone in the living room, staring at the floor where her suitcase had stood. The air still smelled faintly of vanilla and soap, her scent. A memory. A ghost. He sank into the couch head in his hands. The noise from outside faded. The world for once went silent. His phone buzzed again, Henry's name flashing. He didn't answer. Then another message came through from Evelyn. You've ruined everything we built. I hope she was worth it. Lucas stared at the text, then at the empty room around him. She was, he whispered. By midnight, he was driving aimlessly through the city, past Central Park, down Broadway, across bridges glinting in the cold moonlight. He ended up back in Harlem, parking in front of the old hospital where Abigail worked. He saw her through the glass doors, tired, focused, holding a clipboard, talking to another nurse. She looked strong, determined, like she'd been built to survive every heartbreak he ever gave her. He didn't go in. He just watched from the street, the way a man watches something he'll never deserve again. The next morning, the board of Hayes Dynamics held their emergency meeting. Henry spoke first, his tone clipped. Effective immediately, we are suspending Lucas Hayes as CEO pending review. Lucas didn't argue. He signed the papers, quietly handed over his access card, and walked out. As he stepped into the street, the winter wind hit him hard, sharp, unrelenting, honest. For the first time in his life, he had no company, no title, no safety net. Just a name that had once meant something. That night, he sat alone at a diner near Harlem, staring into a cup of black coffee gone cold. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, refilled it without asking. Tough day, she asked. He smiled faintly. Something like that. She nodded toward the window. Outside, 2 kids were running through the snow laughing. You know what I always say, no one remembers the man who made the most money. They remember the one who stayed. Lucas looked out at the children, their laughter echoing against the empty street. He thought of Zoe's eyes, Zach's grin, Abigail's trembling voice when she said, "You can't fix this with money." For the first time he understood. He didn't want to fix it. He wanted to earn it. And maybe, just maybe, that meant losing everything first. On him in the diner window, a once powerful man, now just a silhouette against the Harlem night. Snow falls softly outside, blurring the lights, blurring the past. Somewhere miles away, Abigail turns off the lights in her hospital shift and exhales a long, heavy breath that feels like both an ending and a beginning. And though neither of them knows it yet, their paths are about to cross again, not by accident this time, but by choice. Because sometimes love doesn't return when you call it. It returns when you earn it. Snow drifted through the gray Harlem morning, falling soundlessly over the worn sidewalks. Lucas Hayes stood on the corner collar, up breath fogging in the cold. His suit, still tailored, still perfect, looked out of place against the cracked bricks and flickering streetlights. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not anymore. Not after the scandal, not after the company stripped his name from the glass tower he'd built. But his body had brought him here on its own, to the only place that still made sense. Across the street, Abigail Carter was closing the door to her apartment. She looked exhausted, bundled in her Scrubs coffee thermos in hand. She didn't see him at first. The twins trailed behind her, laughing as they tossed handfuls of snow at each other. Zach spotted Lucas first. "Mom, look, it's him." Abigail froze. Slowly she turned. Their eyes met across the street. 6 years of love and loss, guilt and distance, all hanging in that frozen air between them. Lucas didn't move, didn't wave, just stood there, hands in his pockets, waiting for her to look away. She didn't. "Come on," she said softly to the twins, ushering them toward the bus stop. But her voice lacked conviction. Her steps slowed almost imperceptibly, as if part of her, the part that still remembered, couldn't quite walk away. The bus arrived. The twins climbed aboard. Abigail turned to him one last time before disappearing inside. Lucas raised a hand, a small, uncertain wave, and then she was gone. The street fell silent again. That night, Lucas returned to the brownstone apartment he was renting, a far cry from the penthouse he'd once owned. Half the furniture was gone, the walls bare. A single lamp flickered over his desk. He opened his laptop, staring at a draft of the letter he'd been writing for days. To the board of Hayes Dynamics Effective. Immediately, I relinquish all remaining shares to the Harlem Heart Foundation. This isn't a publicity stunt. This is restitution. LH. He paused, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Then he hit send. The next morning, every news outlet in the country reported it. Fallen billionaire donates entire fortune to Harlem hospital and education programs. The world called it redemption. But Lucas didn't feel redeemed. He felt empty. 3 weeks later, Abigail found him. She walked into the hospital's staff lounge after her shift and stopped dead in her tracks. Lucas was there, sitting on a plastic chair, wearing a gray hoodie and holding 2 paper cups of coffee. "You work here now?" she asked, voice low, half amused, half exasperated. He stood. "Volunteering. The foundation's helping rebuild the pediatric wing. I thought I could help too." She crossed her arms. "You don't have to do this." "I know," he said, smiling faintly, "but I want to." The silence that followed wasn't cold this time. It was heavy, warm, like something unspoken was trying to breathe again. "Lucas." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "You can't keep showing up like this. The kids are getting confused. Maybe they're not the only ones," he said softly. Her eyes flashed. Don't what?" "Be honest. Don't make me remember the version of you that never stayed." Lucas's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then let me stay this time." Days turned into weeks. Lucas came by the hospital almost every day. He helped move supplies, fixed broken lights, painted walls. The staff gossiped about the billionaire with a toolbox, but he didn't care. Every afternoon when Abigail's shift ended, she'd find him waiting outside, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with silence. They began walking home together, sometimes talking, sometimes not. One evening, as snow began to fall again, she asked, "Why here, Lucas? You could have rebuilt your company. You could have left this city behind." He looked around at the cracked sidewalks, the lights glowing in apartment windows, the kids playing on the corner. "Because this is where I lost everything that mattered," he said, "and I don't want to leave until I understand why." Abigail stared at him, something shifting behind her guarded expression. "You already know why," she whispered. "You just never had the courage to face it." He nodded. "Then maybe that's what I'm doing now." One Sunday, he stopped by the apartment again. The twins were in the living room, sprawled across the floor, drawing. "Hey, Mr. Lucas," Zoe said brightly. "We made something." Lucas knelt beside them. On the paper was a drawing, a stick figure. Family, 4 people, 2 adults, 2 kids holding hands under a sun that took up half the sky. He swallowed hard. "That's beautiful." "Mom says families come in all kinds," Zach added proudly. "Ours is just complicated." Lucas chuckled softly. "That's one word for it." Abigail watched from the doorway, her arms folded, but the edge in her gaze had softened. Later, after the twins went to bed, she joined him on the balcony. The air was cold and sharp. "You're good with them," she said quietly. "They make it easy," he replied. "They have your heart." She smiled faintly, looking out at the city. "You're different now. Softer. I lost everything that made me hard." She turned to him, meeting his eyes. "And what are you looking for now?" He took a breath. "Forgiveness. Maybe a second chance." Abigail didn't answer, but she didn't turn away either. Weeks later, an unexpected storm hit the city, ice, sleet, wind. Power flickered out across Harlem. Lucas rushed to Abigail's building with a flashlight and blankets. He knocked, but no one answered. Panic tightened his chest until a small voice called from inside Mr. Lucas. He forced the door open. The apartment was dark. Zoe and Zach were huddled under blankets, shivering. Abigail lay on the couch, pale, clutching her chest. "Abby." Her eyes fluttered open. "Lucas, I'm fine. Just tired." He knelt beside her, heart pounding. "You're not fine." She smiled weakly. "Old heart condition. You remember?" "Yeah." He breathed, gripping her hand. "I remember everything." He stayed with her through the night, feeding the twins soup, keeping her warm, holding her hand until her pulse steadied. When dawn finally came and the power flickered back, she was asleep. Lucas sat beside her, watching the first light hit her face. The kids curled up on the other side of the couch. For the first time in his life, he felt peace. Not success, not redemption, just quiet, real peace. The next morning, Abigail woke to the smell of coffee. Lucas was in the kitchen, still wearing yesterday's clothes. Hair messy, smile easy. "You look awful," she teased. "Thanks," he said, pouring her a cup. "I was going for humble exhaustion." She laughed, a sound he hadn't heard in years, light and unguarded. "Lucas," she said softly, setting the mug down, "you didn't have to stay. I wanted to." Her eyes met his. "You always say that, but you're still here." He smiled. "That's the difference." The moment stretched, fragile, tentative, but real. Outside, the city thawed beneath the morning sun. Inside, something long frozen began to melt too. That evening, Lucas stood in front of the half-finished mural at the new pediatric wing, a mural the kids had started painting, filled with stars and bright colors. He dipped a brush into yellow paint and wrote 4 small words at the corner home. Found at last. He didn't know if she would forgive him or if they could ever be what they once were. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of the answer. Because he finally understood love isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about showing up again and again until the cracks start to heal on their own. That night when he walked Abigail and the twins home, Zach slipped his hand into his. Zoe followed, humming under her breath. Abigail looked up at him, her expression unreadable. Then softly she said, "You can stay for dinner." He smiled, eyes glinting with something he hadn't felt in years, hope. And as the 4 of them disappeared into the warm light of the apartment, the snow outside began to fall again, not heavy, not harsh, but gentle, like forgiveness. It was supposed to be a quiet week. For the first time in years, life had a rhythm. Lucas helped at the hospital during the day, picked up the twins from school, and sometimes, if the world was kind, stayed for dinner with Abigail. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even certain. But it was peace, fragile, borrowed precious. Until the past came knocking. It started with a phone call. Lucas was in the hospital cafeteria balancing 2 coffees when his phone buzzed. The name flashing on the screen made his stomach tighten. Henry Walsh. He hesitated, then answered. Henry. "So you're still alive," Henry said dryly. "That's something. What do you want?" "What I always wanted to remind you that running away doesn't erase what you owe." Lucas sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "I signed everything over, Henry. The board has my resignation, the assets, the not everything." Henry's voice darkened. "You still own your name. And right now your name is costing me millions." Lucas froze. "What are you talking about?" Henry laughed bitterly. "Come on, man. You think you can just vanish, donate the company, and the world moves on? The press still drags us through the mud. And guess who they blame for every bad quarter? The idiot who fell in love with a nurse from Harlem." Lucas's jaw clenched. "Don't you dare talk about her." "Oh, relax. I'm not the one you should worry about. You've got bigger problems." "What problems?" Henry hesitated, savoring the pause. "I sent you an email. Check it." The line went dead. Lucas opened the message. His blood ran cold. Attached was a document, a court notice. Custody inquiry, minor children. Zoe Carter and Zach Carter. Below that, the plaintiff's name, Henry Walsh, acting under petition for paternity investigation and guardianship rights review. He stared at it for a full minute before realizing what Henry had done. The company's PR team had spun a new story. Lucas Hayes abandoned his illegitimate family, and now corporate counsel was intervening for the welfare of the children. It wasn't about the kids. It was about destroying him publicly, one final blow. Lucas grabbed his coat and ran. He found Abigail at home, sitting at the kitchen table. The envelope lay open in front of her. "Abby," he said, breathless. "Don't believe any of it. It's a smear campaign, Henry." "Stop." Her voice was calm but shaking. "I already called the hospital lawyer. They confirmed it's real. There's going to be a hearing. It's not about custody. They don't care about the kids. I do." She snapped, slamming the papers down. "I have spent 6 years protecting them from your world, Lucas. And look where we are again." He moved closer. "I'll fix this. You can't keep saying that," she shouted. Her voice cracked mid-sentence. "Every time you say that, something worse happens." He froze. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I tried to believe you'd changed," she whispered, "that this time you'd stay. But you brought the chaos back. You always do." Lucas stepped forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "Abby, please, don't shut me out again." She looked at him for a long moment, a storm of fear, anger, and love swirling in her gaze. Then she turned away. "Go," she said quietly, "before the twins see you. Abby, go." He stood there for another second, trying to memorize her face. Then he left. The next few days blurred into one another. Lucas avoided the press, ignored the calls, and spent hours pacing the empty apartment. Every time he tried to text her, he deleted the message. Then one night, he got another call from the hospital. "Mr. Hayes," a nurse said nervously, "you might want to come down here." "Why?" "What happened?" "It's Abigail Carter." She collapsed during her shift. When he arrived, the fluorescent lights of Harlem Hospital cut through the darkness like a blade. Nurses hurried past him. The air was thick with antiseptic and panic. "Where is she?" he demanded. "Room 212. He burst through the door. Abigail lay on the bed, pale and still, monitors beeping softly. Her hands were trembling slightly, the IV line snaking down her wrist. The doctor turned. "She's stable, but her heart conditions worsened. Stress and exhaustion mostly. She needs rest, less pressure." Lucas's voice broke. "I am the pressure." The doctor sighed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Then maybe she needs a little less of you right now." When the doctor left, Lucas sat beside her. The quiet of the room pressed in, filled only by the sound of the monitor. He took her hand, gently, afraid to wake her, afraid not to. "Abby," he whispered, "I don't know how to love you without ruining you, but I swear to God I'm trying." Her eyelids fluttered. For a second he thought she was dreaming until she spoke, voice faint. "You don't ruin me, Lucas," she murmured. "You just make me remember what it felt like to believe." He swallowed hard. "Then let me give you something better than belief. Let me give you peace." Her eyes opened slowly, soft but distant. "Then prove it. Don't fight. Don't fix. Just be still." Days later, Lucas kept his word. He didn't go to the custody hearing. He didn't give the press a statement. Instead, he signed everything over to Abigail's legal counsel, every remaining asset trust property. Everything. He disappeared from the headlines. The world stopped talking about him. And in that silence, something began to shift. Spring crept over Harlem, slow and reluctant. The snow melted into rain, the air warmer, streets louder. Abigail recovered, little by little. She went back to work part-time, though everyone said she should rest longer. The twins thrived. Zoe took piano lessons. Zach started drawing. Life moved forward cautiously. Then one afternoon she found a letter in her mailbox. No return address, just her name. Inside a single sheet of paper. "Abby, there's a foundation starting in Brooklyn, scholarships for kids who don't get second chances. I thought maybe you'd like to run it. If you say yes, the board will contact you. If not, that's okay too. Tell Zoe and Zach I'm proud of them, even if I'm not there to say it. And if they ever ask what happened to me, tell them the truth, that I loved them before I even knew they existed. Lucas." Her hand trembled. Tears blurred the words. She folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her chest. That night, as she tucked the twins into bed, Zoe asked sleepily, "Mom, is Mr. Lucas coming back?" Abigail hesitated, looking at their hopeful faces. "I don't know," she said softly. "But sometimes people don't need to come back to still be here." Zoe frowned. "That sounds confusing." Abigail smiled through tears. "It is, but love usually is." Weeks passed. The city bloomed into summer. And one evening, walking home from her shift, Abigail saw something on the hospital bulletin board. A photo. A group of children standing under a banner, The Lucas Hayes Foundation, opening day. She smiled. Then she noticed the man in the background, almost hidden, blurred distant, standing under a tree watching the ribbon cutting from afar. His hands in his pockets, his eyes turned toward the light. She stood there for a long time, her heart both breaking and mending at once. Outside, the evening sun dipped below the skyline, painting the city gold. And somewhere in that glow between the past and what might still be, Abigail Carter whispered into the wind, "Thank you for learning how to stay, even if it means staying away." A year passed. The city had changed, or maybe it was Lucas who had. The headlines were gone, the scandal forgotten. But somewhere in Brooklyn, in a repurposed warehouse, painted with murals and children's laughter, the Lucas Hayes Foundation quietly grew into something real. Every morning, Lucas arrived early, coffee in one hand, blueprints in the other. He didn't wear suits anymore, just rolled up sleeves and sneakers covered in dust from the construction site. The kids adored him. They called him Mr. L. He taught them how to build robots out of scrap, how to code, how to believe in something more than survival. And every time one of them laughed, he thought of Zoe. Every time one of them stumbled and got up again, he thought of Zach. He didn't try to call, didn't write again. Some debts could only be paid in silence. But at night, when the lights dimmed and the noise faded, he'd find himself staring at the mural that hung in the main hall, a painting of 4 figures under a bright yellow sun. It was the drawing the twins had once made. Abigail had sent it to him through the foundation's board. No note, no explanation, just the drawing. And for Lucas, that was enough. One gray afternoon, he was in the middle of a staff meeting when a volunteer knocked on the door. "There's someone here to see you," she said. Lucas looked up, confused. "Who?" The volunteer smiled. "She said you'd recognize her." When the door opened, he forgot how to breathe. Abigail Carter stood there, hair shorter now, a navy coat dusted with rain. Time hadn't erased the exhaustion from her face, but it had added something else, a quiet confidence, a calm grace. "Hi," she said simply. He stood so fast his chair nearly fell over. "Abby, still can't say hello like a normal person, huh?" She teased, lips curving faintly. He laughed softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "Guess not." Silence settled thick, but not hostile. Just fragile. "I didn't think I'd see you here," he said finally. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, glancing around the bright renovated space. "Hard to miss a building with your name on it." "Not really mine anymore," he said. "It belongs to the kids now." She nodded, then looked up at the mural, the sun, the family, the handprints of dozens of children layered over the years. "It's beautiful." "Zoe's drawing," he said quietly. "You sent it." "I thought you'd like it here," she replied. Someplace it could mean something. It already did. Their eyes met the air between them, heavy with memories neither had the courage to say out loud. They walked through the foundation together. The sound of kids laughing echoed down the hall. One boy ran up to Lucas, tugging at his sleeve. "Mr. L. Look, it works." He held up a small wooden windmill that spun under the fan. Lucas grinned. "Told you it would." When the boy left, Abigail turned to him. "You're good with them." "I had a good teacher," he said. She raised a brow. "Oh, who's that?" He smiled. "A nurse from Harlem who never gave up on anyone." Her eyes softened. "You learned how to stay." "Still learning," he said quietly. They stopped in front of a classroom where a girl was drawing with markers, big messy suns and hearts. Abigail watched her for a while, her voice almost a whisper. "Zoe would love this place." Lucas turned. "How is she?" Both of them are good, Abigail said. Zach's obsessed with science now. Zoe's still Zoe. Bright, stubborn kind. He smiled faintly. Sounds familiar. She asked about you, Abigail said suddenly. I told her the truth. His breath caught. The truth that you made mistakes, that you hurt people, but that you're trying to do better. She met his gaze. And that you love her. Lucas swallowed hard. Thank you. You don't need to thank me. It's the truth. They ended up on the rooftop by late afternoon. Rain had stopped leaving puddles shimmering across the concrete. The city stretched around them alive, imperfect, endlessly moving. Lucas leaned against the railing. It's strange. For years I thought success was about building something bigger than myself. Turns out, it was about learning to stand still. Abigail smiled softly. You were never good at stillness. Maybe I needed to lose everything to find it. A gust of wind swept her hair across her face. He reached out instinctively, then stopped halfway. She noticed the hesitation. It's okay, she said quietly. He brushed the hair aside gently. His fingers trembled, barely grazing her skin. You look happy, she said. I am, he replied, but not in the way people think. How's that? I'm happy, because I finally know what I can live without, and what I can't. Abigail looked away, blinking fast. Lucas. He cut her off softly. I'm not asking for anything, not forgiveness, not another chance. Just thank you for saving me when you didn't have to. You did that yourself, she said. I just picked up the phone. He laughed quietly, eyes glistening. You always make it sound so simple. Because it is, she said. Love isn't complicated, Lucas. It's just hard. The sun began to set, turning the skyline into a wash of gold and shadow. Neither of them moved. Then Abigail spoke again. Zoe's piano recital is next week. He blinked. What? She wanted me to invite you. Zach, too. He's drawing the backdrop. She smiled faintly. They think it wouldn't be fair if you missed it. Lucas's voice caught. Abby, are you sure I wouldn't be standing here if I wasn't? He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding that breath for a year. I'll be there. I know, she said, smiling gently. The recital was held in a small community theater downtown. Rows of folding chairs, parents whispering the smell of cheap coffee and fresh paper programs. Lucas slipped into the back row unnoticed. Abigail sat near the front, surrounded by other families. He didn't try to get her attention. He just watched. When Zoe walked on stage, hair in braids, wearing a simple white dress, his throat tightened. She sat at the piano, tiny hands poised, and began to play. The melody was hesitant at first, then grew stronger, fuller. It wasn't perfect. A few missed notes, a pause too long, but it was real raw, beautiful. As the final note faded, the audience erupted into applause. Zoe stood bowing shyly. For a brief second, her eyes found him in the back row. She smiled. Lucas felt something inside him settle. Not triumph, not even joy. Just peace. After the recital, he waited outside, unsure if he should approach. Abigail emerged with the twins. Zoe spotted him first and ran over. You came, she said, throwing her arms around him. He laughed softly, hugging her tight. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Zach crossed his arms, pretending to be unimpressed. You cried, didn't you? Lucas smiled. Maybe a little. Abigail walked up, eyes shining in the glow of the streetlight. They did great, huh? They were incredible, he said. Both of them. Zoe tugged his hand. We're getting ice cream. You're coming too, right? Lucas looked at Abigail. She hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, he's coming. They walked down the street together, the four of them, laughter trailing behind like music. The city buzzed around them, neon signs, flickering taxis, honking life, happening in every direction. At the corner, Abigail slowed, looking up at the sky. You ever notice how New York never stops moving? Lucas smiled. Yeah. But sometimes, if you listen close enough, you can still hear the quiet between the noise. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't see the man who left. She saw the one who stayed. He reached for her hand. This time she didn't pull away. Rain glistened against the sidewalks of Lower Manhattan, reflecting the neon pulse of the city. It was late, too late for families, too early for dreamers. But inside a small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, warmth lingered like a secret. Lucas Hayes sat by the window watching the storm. The light outside flickered, catching the tired lines on his face. The lines of a man who had lived too much, lost too much, and learned what truly mattered. He stirred his coffee absent-mindedly. The spoon clinked softly against porcelain, a rhythm of waiting. The door chimed. He looked up. Abigail stepped in, shaking rain from her umbrella. Her hair was damp, her coat speckled with drops, and her smile small. Real lit the dim cafe, more than the bulbs overhead. She spotted him immediately. He stood up, nervous despite himself. Hey, he said. Hey. Her voice was soft, but it held something new, ease, maybe even peace. They sat down. Silence hovered for a few seconds before the waitress appeared with 2 mugs. Abigail raised a brow. You ordered for me? Lucas smiled. Black 1 sugar. You still hate cream. She smirked. You remember that, but forget anniversaries. He winced. I'm still making up for that one. She laughed genuinely this time. The sound of it filled the space between them, bridging years of distance and regret. Outside, the rain eased into a drizzle. Inside, they spoke in fragments, soft and uncertain. How's the foundation? Abigail asked. Busy, he said. We expanded to 3 boroughs. Robotics, scholarships, healthcare, access, the works. I read about that, she said. You're becoming something of a local legend. He shook his head. No legends. Just work. Keeps me grounded. Abigail's eyes lingered on him. You've changed, Lucas. He looked at her, then away. I had to. The man I used to be wouldn't have deserved a second chance. She tilted her head. And now? He took a deep breath, meeting her gaze. Now I'm just trying to be the kind of man my kids, our kids, would be proud of. The words hung there, heavy but warm. Abigail's expression softened. Zoe and Zach are proud of you. They talk about you all the time. Really? She smiled. Zach says you're like Iron Man, but with more guilt and fewer explosions. Lucas laughed, that deep, unguarded laugh she hadn't heard in years. That sounds about right. And Zoe? Abigail hesitated, eyes glinting. She said, you're the reason she believes good men still exist. He swallowed hard, voice catching. She shouldn't have to believe that because of me. Abigail reached across the table, touching his hand. Maybe you should let her decide what to believe. They stepped into the cold night. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement shining like glass. The air smelled of wet concrete and blooming lilies from the flower shop next door. Lucas walked beside her, hands in pockets. You could have called, you know. I almost did. 100 times. What stopped you? She glanced up at him. Fear. That maybe we'd go back to what we were, not what we've become. He nodded. You were right to wait. I wasn't ready back then. Maybe I'm still not. She smiled faintly. Honesty looks good on you. They reached the corner where the streetlight flickered gold over their faces. A cab whooshed past, sending a gust of cold air between them. Abigail stopped. Zoe's auditioning for Juilliard next month. Lucas blinked. Already? She's terrified, Abigail said. But she plays like she's lived 3 lifetimes. Sometimes I listen to her and wonder how something that beautiful came from all that pain. Lucas looked at her, his voice quiet. Pain shapes beauty. You taught me that. She smiled sadly. And Zach's been drawing city skylines nonstop. He wants to be an architect. He says he wants to build something that lasts. Lucas's chest tightened. Sounds like his mother. She shook her head gently. No. He gets that from you. A faint hum of whispers filled the auditorium. The stage lights glowed softly, catching motes of dust, swirling through the air. Lucas sat in the back row, nervous. Abigail sat beside him, clutching a small bouquet. Zoe walked onto the stage. Her dress, simple, and white hair, tied in a braid. She looked small under the vast ceiling, but when she sat at the piano, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then she played. The first notes were hesitant, delicate trembling. Then stronger, bolder. The melody wove through the hall like a confession. Every chord carried a story of a boy who left a woman who stayed, and 2 children who turned heartbreak into art. Lucas blinked rapidly, trying not to let the tears fall. When Zoe finished, silence lingered, that stunned, reverent silence only beauty could command. Then applause erupted. Abigail stood, clapping through tears. Lucas joined her, unable to look away from their daughter. The air outside was cool and gold. Zoe came running out, beaming. Did I mess up? Lucas knelt to her level. You didn't play music, he said, smiling through tears. You breathed it. Zach held up his sketchpad. I drew the moment she started playing. Look. On the paper was a pencil drawing of Zoe at the piano, and in the front row, 2 silhouettes, side by side, hands barely touching. Abigail saw it and froze. Then she looked at Lucas. You see what I mean? He's got your eye for meaning. Lucas chuckled softly. No, he's got yours. He finds the story in the quiet things. The twins ran ahead toward the fountain, laughing, chasing each other under the lights. Lucas and Abigail watched, their smiles mirroring bittersweet, full, alive. The twins were asleep. The city glowed beyond the window. Lucas stood by the counter pouring tea, while Abigail leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. You're staying late, she teased. I was hoping for one more cup before you kick me out. She smiled. You know you could just not leave. He froze. Slowly he turned. You mean that? She nodded. I'm tired of running from something that's already here. Lucas set the cups down, walked closer. I can't promise I won't screw up again. I know. I can't promise I'll be easy to love. I know that too. He stopped in front of her, inches away. Then why? She looked up at him, eyes shimmering. Because the man who left me 6 years ago isn't the one standing here now. Silence. A heartbeat. Then another. He reached up, fingers trembling as they brushed her cheek. She didn't pull away. Abby, he whispered. Stop talking, she murmured. He did. The kiss wasn't perfect. It wasn't meant to be. It was messy, human, real. Years of distance melted into a single breath. When they finally broke apart, Abigail rested her forehead against his chest. Welcome home, Lucas. He smiled against her hair. It's about time. Spring. Zoe plays piano in the foundation's hall light, streaming through the windows. Lucas and Abigail watch from the backhands, intertwined. Summer. Zach unveils his first architectural model, a community garden shaped like a heart. Lucas claps the loudest. Autumn. Abigail walks into the hospital wing that now bears her name, the Carter unit funded quietly by Lucas. Winter. Snow falls. The family builds a snowman outside their apartment. Lucas helps Zoe fix the scarf while Zach throws snowballs at him from behind. Abigail laughs, watching them all. The camera lingers on, that laughter full unguarded, the sound of something healed. Exterior, Central Park. Night years later. The city skyline glows behind them. The twins, now older, chase each other down the snowy path. Lucas and Abigail sit on a bench, hands clasped, watching the lights reflect off the frozen lake. "You ever think about how it started?" Abigail asks. "At 4 in the morning, he says with a smile, "with a phone call I'll never forget." She laughs softly. "Some miracles come disguised as chaos." He looks at her. "You were never chaos, Abby. You were the reason I learned how to love anything again." She squeezes his hand. "And you were the reason I learned how to forgive." They sit in silence, the snow falling slower now, softer. "Do you ever wish it had gone differently?" she asks. He shakes his head. "If it had, I might not have become the man who could love you right." She leans into him, resting her head on his shoulder. The camera pulls back slowly, capturing them framed against the glittering city, the world spinning gently around them. At 4 a.m. in Harlem, 2 children called a stranger and brought love back from the past. Some stories don't end when the credits roll. They keep going through the laughter, through the ordinary, through the people brave enough to stay. My parents taught me that love isn't a grand gesture. It's a quiet one, a coffee at dawn, a promise kept, a second chance taken. And sometimes the person you once lost was only gone long enough to find their way home. The family walks hand in hand across Central Park as snow begins to fall again. The city hums alive, infinite. The same one that once watched a broken man, a woman with a brave heart, and 2 children who made a call that changed everything. The frame freezes on the moment their laughter fades into the cold air, 4 silhouettes against the glowing city. If this story found its way to your heart, let it remind you. Love doesn't always come easy, but when it's real, it always finds its way home. The end.